Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Emergency Podcast, live from the Xfinity Mobile Studio and presented by Xfinity. Bo Wulf, Fran Duffy, EJ Smith, and the day has finally come. Eagles fans' long national nightmare is over. AJ Brown has been traded to the New England Patriots for a first-round pick in 2028 and a fifth-round pick in 2027. We have just spoken to Howie Roseman. We can explain some of the Eagles' thinking behind this move and how we got to this point. But we start, Fran, you got to get going in a minute, so we're going to go to you first. Your reaction to the departure of A.J. Brown, the return, and what it means for the Eagles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, this is something that we all have expected to be coming, for a long time, and we all can acknowledge the fact that the Eagles are a worse team for the 2026 season today than they were yesterday with A.J. Brown on the roster. Now, that said, because everyone understood that this was a foregone conclusion, the Eagles have been preparing for this. We know that they've acquired a number of wide receivers over the course of this offseason, certainly no less than the first-round pick, Makai Lemon. The big thing that I wanted to make sure to hit on, though, is the idea of the future first-round pick, the first-round pick coming in 2028 and not until 2028. And that being viewed as like, downplayed value, a worse value than some of the other big trades, namely the Jalen Waddle trade from earlier this offseason. The big thing, and it's kind of become like gospel, is like, oh, well, if it goes 1 year in the future, then you downgrade a round. It's 2 years out, you downgrade 2 rounds. That, I think, it's become the adopted as gospel around NFL zeitgeist around the media and with fans, because that's kind of the nature of the NFL. Like, not for long. Like, teams don't, the coaches, GMs, they don't have job security out that far. So if you're going to make a pick for the future, you may not be the one making that pick. The reason why that is not the case for the Eagles, and honestly, if I'm Mike Vrabel and I'm the New England Patriots, I would feel the same way. They should still be there in 2028, right? So that is a loss for Mike Vrabel. That is a loss for Elliott Wolf. They're coming off of a Super Bowl appearance. So I think when you're looking at the Eagles, it was nice having that extra day 2 pick off that Hassan Reddick trade from 3 summers ago, right? Like, it was nice to have that here this spring. So if you're the one making the pick, a first-round pick is a first-round pick. A second-round pick is a second-round pick. And so for me, I do think that this is a good trade for the Eagles in terms of getting the compensation back that was required for a player of A.J. Brown's talent. Would I have rather kept him on the roster? Absolutely. But clearly, they've reached a point with this relationship, with this dynamic, that they were too far gone from where they were, at this time even a year ago.
Yeah, I think we'll get into the AJ part of this in a sec, but let's just stay here for a second because we're talking about it. The future pick stuff, there's a lot to it. The idea that it's discounted is very silly. There's a reason you don't lock it in this year because, for instance, the Waddle pick, you know what pick that is. There's no variability to it. Now, I think the Eagles would have rather had a 27 pick. There's a little bit of a way to spin it than a 28 pick, but you would rather have an unknown play the lottery 27, 28 first round pick than the 29th pick of the draft, right? We can get into some of the sort of the horizon about it and how it's fortunate for the Eagles. Obviously, they would have rather had A.J. Brown here as a happy camper when they signed him to that deal. That's what they wanted. But knowing that was not going to be the case, I think you take the 2028 pick. Go ahead, EJ. I cut you off.
Yeah, no, you didn't cut me off. I think that there is like a market inefficiency to some degree about the future picks. I think lottery, playing the lottery is a good way of putting it, where we don't know what the New England Patriots will look like 2 years from now. And also, like, that future pick gives them flexibility to be aggressive, down the road in the interim between now.
Right. They have that asset now to trade if they want to.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. And we've seen the value of future picks in deals today. So yeah, no, I think that is an important thing to keep in mind. Although, like, I'm not here to tell people that, if you're a little disappointed in the compensation, like, I can understand that. A.J. Brown's a great player. Like, I think the Waddle comparison, I said it earlier, like, A.J. Brown is better than Jalen Waddle. I know it's not that simple. I know that there's a lot of factors at play there, but again, I'm not here to tell someone that the compensation isn't, maybe even when you're comparing to Jalen Waddle, you would have expected A.J. Brown to command more of a market, but clearly, that didn't bear out.
I would also remind you, this is a very full circle moment. The whole reason the Eagles were able to trade for A.J. Brown in the first place is because they had a surplus of first-round picks from trading Carson Wentz for picks 2 years out. So that's how this works. All right, Fran, any final thoughts before you go on just the the football of it all and what will be incumbent upon Makai Lemon and Dontavian Wicks and all of those guys to replace from an AJ Brown standpoint?
Obviously, it's huge shoes to fill, and it's not going to be a one-for-one replacement. Makai Lemon by himself is not going to replace AJ Brown. It's very much going to be a Moneyball situation where you're going to try and replace him in the aggregate. You're hoping that the other aspects of the offense being better than 2025, meaning like the offensive line and therefore the run game, if those things can be better, then that takes something off the shoulders of some of these other receivers as well. And I think there's reason to expect that that should be better here this fall. So, yeah, like I said, if you're just looking at it on paper, like the depth chart is better with AJ Brown on it here for this year. But, you reached a point where that was too far gone. It just wasn't reality that they were going to be able to keep AJ Brown here for this season.
All right. The great Fran Duffy, our All City NFL draft expert, Eagles expert as well. Go coach some Little League. We appreciate it.
Little League expert.
See you guys.
All right. EJ, let's get to this. This is, we got here. We finally reached the moment that we were waiting for. How did it measure up to your expectations?
I mean, it's hard to say whether it measured up to my expectations. I'm glad that we finally got some finality to this.
Why aren't we at your house? I should have been right behind you.
I know. Well, honestly, I think it's fair to say that we knew this was coming, and we probably made the right decision that, we will have a cookout now that we do not have the prospect of breaking Eagles news hanging over our heads. I would say I'm glad there's some finality to it. I have 5 thoughts up on allphly.com that I wrote actually last night. Classic procrastination move by me to wait until May 31st. I think that the time has allowed us to really materialize the way that we feel about this. And, I think the context of today, with the Myles Garrett trade, obviously the Rams getting significantly better, it is daunting to see that the Eagles are getting worse. And there's no argument against that. Obviously, I guess they use this future pick for a premium player between now and training camp? I suppose so. But realistically, the 2026 Eagles are going to be a worse team on paper because of the fact that AJ Brown's not part of the team. But I think, when what Fran mentioned about the receiving core and Sean Mannion being the bet the Eagles are making, I really do think that it zeroes in. Obviously, there are people on the periphery, but it really, to me, zeroes in on Sean Mannion and DeVonta Smith. A belief that DeVonta Smith can step into a high volume role in this offense and take on more of that workload and be able to see a legitimate increase in production because of that increased workload. I think, obviously we've talked before, there's an internal belief that if he was more featured, if he was closer to the 150 target mark, he would be, closer to the Puka Nakuas and the Jackson Smith and Jigbas of the world. So I think there's a big onus on DeVonta here. And I also think there's a big onus on Sean Mannion and a big onus on there. It doesn't need to be as much one-on-one matchup. You have to win you have to win on the perimeter to make this offense work. I think that, Jalen Hurts has said it, they will be less reliant on that. So, they have a significant gulf to make up with AJ Brown's departure. And that's not even accounting for the fact that the pass game wasn't productive enough last year. They almost have to exceed what AJ did last year. But I think, if you told me that DeVonta and Sean Mannion had great years, you feel okay about them making up for that gap.
So we spoke to Howie Roseman, and he was asked, essentially, what happened? How did we get here? And he said, I think that when we looked at the totality of the circumstances, felt like with where we were going, where he was, meaning AJ Brown, that if we could find something that kind of achieved our goals and his ... essentially it was a win-win situation based on where he was and where we felt we were, and we were open to that. And so reading between the tea leaves and stuff, I mean, it's very clear the Eagles were hoping that AJ Brown would want to be back. And, they checked in with him at the beginning of the offseason, and it didn't feel like it was over yet then. And then as the offseason went on, AJ sort of made it clear that he wanted to be elsewhere. And so the Eagles proceeded as such, which I think we could have all read from the outside, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, the Eagles get to, okay, well, we're going to try to send you somewhere that you want to go, because there's no sense in a team trading for AJ if he's not going to be happy there anyway. It's not to say that there's AJ had veto power, but a team is not going to trade for him and give up a first round pick unless they know that AJ is going to want to be there.
Yeah.
And so then the Eagles go about the process of finding a place to get the right value for the player. And that's when, Howie says it's going to take a first plus. And so like they throw in the 5th round pick and you can say that they got that first plus. But it also means that if this was the best offer, this offer is only good enough so long as we can spread the cap hit out, open up the cash, and then we can get into sort of the time horizon of the roster, EJ, how this all plays into, convincing yourself that you have made the best of an unfortunate situation for the Eagles. But was anything about the way that this all played out in the offseason interesting to you from what Howie said?
I thought one of the other quotes that I had here that I found interesting, he said there are parallel paths. We can be a really good team with him. We've shown that in the 4 years he's been here, but also with the resources that we have, we could build a really good team going forward as well. I think that, the tone that he took was more of a forward looking tone. It wasn't necessarily about the urgency of this upcoming season, but sort of like the long-term roster building. And again, I think that you could have mixed feelings about that. Like the Eagles are in a championship window. You kind of want them to recognize that and have an urgency about it. But, ultimately, I do think having a future asset like this, it probably is the right roster building decision once you get to a point where AJ Brown doesn't want to be there anymore, which honestly, again, reading between the tea leaves here, reading between the lines of what Howie said, I think that was something that he did make clear in more or less words, and he alluded to it, but still it's quite clear that like it was conversations they had with AJ that led them to decide like it's probably best if we don't move forward.
I think that I know that I agree with Howie about I would rather have the future pick than a locked in pick at the end of the first round in 2026, especially in a draft that was not very good. I think that's the right decision. I think Howie, would probably rather have a pick in 27 from the Patriots than in 28, but there remains real upside that this could be a top 15 pick in 2028. And obviously you can always package that to move up and get somebody else. There is kind of I don't think this is by design, but it is a fortunate accident for them just in terms of the horizon of, where they need to open up cash that they have now done with AJ and the guys who are coming up on contracts and who they're going to sign. It is kind of a 2-year window. Like, Quinyon and Cooper DeJean have 2 years left essentially on their rookie deals, right? Before they sign those guys. And so when you're going to sign these big money extensions, it will be beneficial to have 2 first-round picks if that's when you want to use them.
Yeah, and we also should mention the amount of cash that they're saving with this trade. It's $113 million over the next 4 years that they have. Now, that's not cap space. That's not necessarily short-term flexibility, but what it does allow them to do is account for some of those big contracts that they're going to have to hand out on the defensive side. So, it's something that if you're an Eagles fan, you've heard a lot about. The flexibility that Jeffrey Lurie being aggressive with cash spending has given the team. And it's going to be an important thing with some of these extensions. So again, these are all like small things. And I don't want to like lose sight of the fact that like the Eagles just traded one of the best receivers in the NFL. But I do think from a roster building standpoint, from like just after hearing from Howie Roseman, these are the types of things that you start to add up when you get to a place where you do need to move on from AJ Brown based off of the conversations that they had.
EJ, it is crazy to think about just how much has happened over the course of AJ Brown's career with the Eagles. Established himself as one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver in franchise history. Goes through all the drama, all the big plays, all the memorable stuff, and then is traded all within the span of just 4 years. EJ, and it's just crazy to think about how much can happen over the course of 4 years. How about 5 years? That's why you want to lock in the 5-year price guarantee from our friends at Xfinity.
Well done.
Because so much can change in 5 years.
That was great. Hat tip to you.
A couple super chats to get to. Will Madden says, is it not journalistically fair to ask Jalen if he turned down going to AJ's wedding or AJ if he did invite Jalen? Thank you for all the pods. Hopefully that'll be the first question that AJ gets asked at his Patriots introductory press conference. SRG, wow. AJ Brown didn't show up for voluntary OTAs and now he's gone. Eagles obviously run a very tight ship.
That's like Howie will say, like, I live under a rock. Like that would be like you live under a rock.
Yeah.
It's like you poke your head out on June 1st. It's like, hang on, wait a minute. Like AJ missed OTAs and they traded him to the Patriots.
And of course, Reverma says, He could have been the best wide receiver in Eagles history, but decided to be a diva instead. Good riddance.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts about this. It's one of the sections in my 5 takeaways was how will AJ Brown be remembered? And I think it's fitting that there's going to be a complicated, legacy left behind by AJ Brown, because so much of his time with the Eagles was nuanced and complicated. I think he is complicated as a person, and I don't say that negatively. I think honestly, I've said it before, like he has like an almost refreshing duality to him where AJ Brown wasn't shy about his priorities and what he wanted. He wanted to dominate. He wanted to affect winning. He didn't just want to win. He wanted to be the reason that they won. And he wanted to win, and maybe as a secondary thing. And sometimes those things weren't aligned. Sometimes the Eagles were winning games, but it wasn't with him as the driving force or him as a primary factor as to why they won games. And I saw him up close struggle with that. And again, that dissonance of the team is successful, but we aren't playing to the absolute peak of our abilities, and I'm not getting the involvement and the fulfillment of dominating games. And I think a lot of star receivers probably struggle with this. I think a lot of star receivers probably deal with wanting to dominate and not always being in the right environment or the right game state where you have the ability to do that. And I understand from a fan perspective that it must be frustrating that winning wasn't enough for AJ. But I do think that that mindset is what really I think it drives players like him to be the best at their position. It's a tough thing to navigate, and I honestly commend him for trying to navigate it so publicly, even if it wasn't always at the benefit, even if it wasn't always beneficial to the team. So I'm not going to tell fans that they should be happy with the way that he operated. I think honestly, I totally get it if you are frustrated, but I think that it is a real thing that a lot of these star receivers have to struggle with. And I think that his was his at least was in good faith for most of his time with the Eagles, I would say.
Yeah. And I think Howie made a point to say that, the idea that he wasn't in last year is overstated. He when they caught up last season, they were on the same page. AJ wanted to go chase another championship. I think it's fair to read that, sometime along the way that wasn't necessarily the case. I think you are allowed to be a little bit annoyed.
Oh, for sure.
I'm more than a little bit annoyed, but yeah, you would imagine that this should be good enough. And I also think from the Eagles' perspective, yes, they are a worse team without AJ Brown, but they are also a better team without a player who is not bought in.
That's fair. And a disinterested version of AJ Brown isn't worth having as a main fixture on your team.
Yeah,
I completely agree with that. Yeah,
football is really hard. Look at the best Eagles teams they've had. You need everybody pulling in the same direction, and obviously there's always going to be some kind of interpersonal drama, and not everybody's going to get along. But it is not helpful to the mission in the ultimate team game to have a guy at that level who doesn't want to be there. And I think the Eagles, this is not the situation they wanted to be in, but I do think that they have come close to making about as good the best that they could have given the situation.
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment there. I think I've seen it in the chat too, that the way that 2025 went for the Eagles, and especially AJ Brown, you don't want to sign up for another year of having that. So in that way, maybe it's not a significant loss in that regard, but I do also think at the end of the day, that guy was going to make, he was a guy who you could count on to make plays in big moments. And he was a guy when the offense broke down, he could create something. So in that regard, it still to me goes back to Sean Mannion and DeVonta Smith, and really Sean Mannion as when it's 3rd and 6 and you don't necessarily have a call that you feel great about, that is where AJ Brown is the mouthwash or the easy button, right? They will not have that as much without AJ. They have to account for it. But yeah, I think that there is still reason to believe that they can account for it. If the optimism around Sean Mannion turns out to be well-founded.
I think my concern from a macro perspective about how the offseason played out for the Eagles, and listen, they could still do something else I think we assume that they were probably involved in the Myles Garrett trade discussions. I would not be surprised if they make another kind of blockbuster addition before the start of week 1. But from a how, like zooming back at the offseason as a whole, the only thing that concerns me a little bit is just how much equity was spent trying to replace AJ. Like having to use your first round pick on a guy who maybe wouldn't have been your pick if you didn't have that huge of a hole. Similar thing for the Dontavian Wicks trade. I think it's a lower level player, but obviously the Packers are a team that could use wide receivers, and they're giving up on him. I think, if you were playing, best player available and position agnostic, that's not the moves that they would have made. We'll see how they play out, but you understand why they did what they did.
I'd push back a little bit. I think the Lemon pick, like, I don't know, who's jumping out to you is like they would have usually gone, with Monroe Freeling, maybe. I guess Keldrick Falk is the player, but I don't know. I think Keldrick Falk is probably the player, but I think that I think it's safe to say that
it's not trading up and it's staying and taking offensive linemen. But
yeah, I think it's safe to say that we were higher on Keldrick Falk than the Eagles were based off of what they did.
Yeah.
But I think your point holds true that they've done a lot at the receiver position, and a lot of it is TBD. It's a lot. I think I think even Howie would say that, like, that group has to prove it. That they have to see what this group looks like without AJ. So yeah, I mean it's a big question mark. But I just keep going back to, I think DeVonta is going to have a big year. I think DeVonta is going to be one of the big winners of this situation, even though I'm sure he is personally very disappointed to see AJ leaving town.
I don't know.
I think DeVonta will be sad. I think DeVonta.
I'm sure he's sad, but in the same way that AJ wants to dominate, DeVonta is a wide receiver too, and now he's going to be a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, that's why he's a winner. I don't know if DeVonta is wired to be like thrilled that he doesn't have another big mouth to feed in the wide receiver room. Especially we've always talked about, like, he's always been in wide receiver rooms with a bunch of guys who have big roles.
They've also talked about how on the sideline he's actually the one who's always wanting the ball, bitching about not getting the ball enough.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun watching wide receiver 1 DeVonta, especially like some of those diva tendencies that he has, and like most of them are innocuous, but like doing the jump rope while everybody else is stretching, and like he's not going to be at the voluntary workouts because he's got his own situation in Florida. Mm-hmm. It'll be fun for him to kind of like lean into that a little bit more.
Well, along those lines, a super chat from Robert Myers, who says, "Glad to be rid of the drama and will miss AJ, but I think Smitty will surprise us all." Yeah, you forget that he's 1K usually open.
And honestly, a good contested catch guy when he's not open. No, I do. I think that there is a lot of optimism about what a 150 target DeVonta Smith season could look like.
We appreciate everybody watching live. Nice to see everybody. We are usually live every day at 2:00, Monday through Friday, talking about the Birds. EJ, anything else from talking to Howie, or just final thoughts that have perked up to you?
I've got some small things, some small newsy things to get through here. So AJ had a statement on his Instagram for Eagles fans that I'll read. It says, "Eagles Nation, thank you for welcoming my family and me with open arms from day one. This city, this locker room, and this fan base will always hold a special place in my heart. So my brothers in that locker room, thank you for going to battle with me every single day. The memories we made together on and off the field are something I'll carry with me forever. To the coaching staff, trainers, equipment staff, cafeteria workers, and the cleaning crew, thank you for everything you do behind the scenes to keep us going. There's so many people in the building who make it possible for us to go out there and compete, and I'm grateful for all of you. Playing for this city has been an honor, and I'm thankful for every moment I had at Midnight Green. Thank you, Philly. Much love, as always. God bless 11. So, pretty nice statement.
Yeah, that's nice.
As far as statements go. And then
no
another
explanation for why he wanted out, but yeah, okay.
I am taking the Patriots post about this as like confirming what number AJ is wearing. I don't know how else I could read it. The Patriots put out a tweet. It says wide receiver 1, and it's AJ Brown in a Patriots jersey wearing the number 1. So I take that as AJ Brown's wearing number 1 with the Patriots.
Oh, you think that's a direct shot?
I'm putting the tinfoil hat back on.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, he's been 11 his whole career. He has a Patriots jersey that says 11 on it. He goes to New England. He's like, give me number 1.
Oh, that's really fun.
I'm just saying.
What is the return serve that Jalen could do?
Wear number 11. The return
Put
serve
up
that
a
Jalen can
sign.
do is what we talked about on the show last week. Jalen Hurts can go out there and get under center and throw
Yeah.
over the middle of the field and be at the center of a top 5 passing offense and show everyone that he is capable of doing all the things that I think it's hard to say that AJ Brown believed that he could do. You know, I think AJ's decision to leave really is like, it's illustrative that he didn't believe that Jalen could be at the center of the offense that would get him the things that he wanted to achieve. And I think that there's a chance Jalen can, and I think there's a chance Jalen will show him that.
Okay. What were your other leftovers?
Those are the big ones. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't like write a bunch of direct quotes from Howie down as to be careful about what I wrote down. But
I
yeah,
have.
I mean,
he said, for us to take a 2026 pick, that's a late first. This was asked about, why the future pick. That's a late first. This is like we were saying and have to deal with the cap consequences that come with making a trade prior to June 1st. It made some sense for us to look at future picks. And they're also like aware of the drafts that are coming. And there is a fair point that everybody's talking about next year's draft, how loaded next year's draft is. Well, a bunch of those guys are going to get good NIL deals and not come out. And they will be in the 2028 draft. So I think there's a little bit of defensiveness from the team about not getting the sticker price of the Waddle compensation. But I think that they are right about you would rather have the upside of it turning out to be much better than the Waddle pick than the immediate hit of getting the pick in what is a mediocre draft to begin with.
Yeah, I agree. I saw somebody say that Julian Edelman wore number 11 with the Patriots. I'm pretty sure that they've given that number out since then, for the record. Yes, those were the big Howie takeaways I had. I agree that they were a little defensive about the 2028 first, and honestly, like rightfully so. What Fran said, it's like, I had someone say to me over the weekend, like, the pick is worth what it's worth when you pick. Whatever the pick is worth, the value of the first round pick the year you have it. I don't think that devaluing them because they're in future years. Honestly, with a GM like Howie, like there's even like added value because it gives you flexibility to be aggressive in the time you wait. So, and I also wanted to say, talking about the compensation, it's like, it's important to remember there wasn't really another team here. Like, it was a weird trade in the sense that the Eagles' leverage was the Patriots needing AJ Brown, and the Patriots' leverage was the Eagles needing to move on from AJ Brown. It's not like there was another team that was like pressuring, the Patriots in this negotiation. So I think that's an important thing to remember. I think it's the post June 1 of it all, something we talked about earlier, the fact that this deal was likely agreed to months ago. But yeah, I just think the fact that there wasn't like a robust market at this point in the offseason did hurt the Eagles' ability to get maybe a little bit more for AJ.
All right. Well, that'll put a bow on this emergency podcast. I'm glad they did it on June 1st, just for the narrative of it all. This is what we were all waiting for. They delivered on expectations. As expected, AJ Brown has been traded from the Eagles to the New England Patriots for a 2028 first-round pick and a fifth-round pick in next year's draft. The Eagles moving on with Makai Lemon and Dontavian Wicks, and hopefully an elevated DeVonta Smith replacing AJ Brown in the aggregate. One of the best receivers in franchise history is gone. The Eagles not happy that he's gone, but feel like they have made the most of a difficult situation. And we'll find out how it goes. For EJ Smith and Fran Duffy and the great Lindsay and Julia for helping us out behind the scenes. Also Ben and Jamie on social, everybody. Good stuff. We will talk to you tomorrow. Actually, not sure what time tomorrow's show is going to be because the Eagles have practice tomorrow that we're going to get to watch and talk to some players. So we'll let you know. Stay tuned to the social media channels. Could be 2 o'clock. Could be 3 o'clock. Could be 4 o'clock. We'll find out. That'll do it. Last thing, EJ. Close your eyes. What is your first thing that comes to mind, AJ Brown moment as an Eagle.
Okay, I'm cheating because 2 came to mind. The
Okay.
first one, AJ Brown, holding the PHLY Eagles account just tweeted this. I sent it to our guys. AJ Brown holding the Lombardi Trophy at Caesar Superdome in the locker room afterward, and he was the one to hand that trophy to Jeffrey Lurie in the locker room. That's a moment.
That's a good one.
Again, I took the video, so it's easy to remember it, but it's a moment I won't forget. And I think it's a moment that's going to be important to remember with AJ, that he's forever a champion with the Eagles. The other one is against the Steelers when Jalen threw him the ball when he was running the clear out route.
Yes.
And he catches it over 2 defenders and points at him. Like that to me is like the perfect AJ Brown play, where it's like that. Sometimes he was just so dominant that it didn't matter what you threw at him.
The Super Bowl touchdown catch when they lost to the Chiefs, that bomb is maybe the signature play in my mind, but also the pointing is probably the other one. Those are great plays. Yeah. Great run for AJ. Great run. And listen, I will say there is a real chance that AJ is a declining player, and by the time that this pick comes, it's like the Eagles got a total steal.
Yeah, that pick could be great.
And also AJ completely underdelivers. There is also a chance that he puts in a superhuman season in New England this year, like he did, in 2022 when he first got to Philadelphia, sort of buoyed by, this is what he wanted all along. There's real variability in AJ Brown's performance, I feel like, over the next couple of years. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I thought you were going to say there's a chance he ends up back with the Eagles, which I was going to laugh at. There's some volatility there. My question for you, actually, should I close my eyes too? No, you can. Yeah, close your eyes. All right, we're fast forwarding about 5-ish years in the future. AJ Brown's my internet price stays the same. Oh yeah, 5-year price guarantee. Shout out to Xfinity. Thank you, Xfinity. You're watching an AJ Brown retirement announcement, and he's putting on a hat before he announces his retirement. What hat is he wearing? Patriots. You think so? I don't know. I think he might be wearing an Eagles hat. It's possible. The best stretch of his career is probably going to be with the Philadelphia Eagles. That's what I would say. Well, I think that's right. Especially because we didn't talk about this, and I know we're going long here. I don't know about the situation that he's entering in New England. Yeah. I think it's important to point that out. Like the bet he's making, I don't know. It could go a different way than he expects. All right. Great stuff, everybody. Thank you for letting us know. Thank you for joining us. Let us know in the comments below the video what you think of the trade, what your favorite AJ Brown moment is, and if you are happy with the Eagles' return here. We will talk to you on the regular show on the PHLY Eagles podcast tomorrow. And as always, we love you. We all silly like the mayor.